This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the October 5th, 2022 Council on Aging Board meeting, and we are being recorded. So welcome, everyone. We will call the meeting to order at 4:02 p.m. And I know we have a full agenda as usual. So minutes, does anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes? Were they able to find it since we accidentally missed the month of September? My apologies for that again. Now, you guys who tell me everything that I miss on email, you missed the fact that I had the wrong date on posted. Oh, I need your eyes. So anyway, regarding the minutes, a motion for the approval of the minutes? Do we need to review them? Okay, Sylvia.
I second.
And Jim second. And we are to roll call votes. Is there any discussion before we move to roll call vote? Okay, all in favor? Susan?
Aye.
Thank you. Sylvia?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
And Janet, aye. Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'm going to close that document over because I have so many of them open. Okay. All right. So I sent out a couple different reports in lieu of the treasurer's report. So this is going to be more of a high level review of the where we ended the year, where we're starting the year. And I have a little bit of summary on a couple, like the state formula grant expenses so far year to date, and also end of year from last year. I just want to kind of review, Joan, with you too, just so I know you kind of look to this meeting to get your reality check, your second set of eyes, correct? So Let me just grab this quick overview first, if I can find it here. Of course, I had everything opened along the bottom. Now, let me just see. I think it's here. Hold on. Sorry. Ignore me while I talk to myself. Okay, so this is just kind of a really high level overview of this year's budget, last year's actuals, and last year's budget. Okay, so just kind of, again, big picture, not detail. Right now, we don't have a treasurer, so, but I don't want to not share some information. So first, in the first column, fiscal year 23. So Joan's wages went from $33,224.26 to $35,603.90. Okay, so our budget this year for your salary, right, Joan, is $35,603.90. That is your salary for the year. That doesn't vary. It's a salaried position, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So this year for the Council on Aging wages, which covers basically 70% of the program coordinator's wage, our budget this year is $7,549.71. Last year's budget was $5,813.42. So we have an increase in that wage line as well. And that's due because the program coordinator is a higher paid hourly rate. And so 70% of Sandy's time comes from this particular town funded wage line. Okay.
She actually works 3 more hours a week than the past.
Right. So it's higher wages and it's more hours per week. Correct. Thanks, Joan. Okay. So last year we had a budget of the $5,800 and we spent $4,492.42. So we had not a carryover, but we were left $1,321 because Darlene left and we hadn't filled the program. So that's basically why there's an excess in that program line. So we wouldn't expect that to happen this year. And then on the Council on Aging expenses this year, same as last year, we had $1,229.62. We did leave $173 on the table last year, which I think as we go down into the state formula grant, we'll look and see that maybe we should have spent that as well and maybe not spent part of the state formula grant, but we'll get into that. So again, this is everything that's town funded. This is what our taxpayers contribute to. This is what comes out of the general fund in the town's budget. Any questions? And if you do have a question, then you can raise your little hand at the bottom. That way I can see everybody, because I can't really see everybody all the time. Okay, so let's look at what we have grant funded this year. So the Memory Cafe, Joan, for this year, that's also the, I wanted to confirm this before I filled it in. So that's also $3,990. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I know at this point in time, when I did this form, we had only spent $997 of the $3,990, but I know we've spent more money since that.
I did send it in the, oh, I might have it here. Yeah, here it is. So we spent a total of $2,446.
And that's been approved by Highland Valley.
Correct.
Okay, so out of the $3,990, we spent
$2,446, and I'll explain that later in my report.
Okay, good. Okay. So the question is on the state formula grant. Have you seen anything or heard of anything regarding how they're calculating that this year, Joan?
I have not.
Okay, so I did ask Bradley if he had received or seen anything from the state to us for the state formula grant. He said he has not seen anything come in from them to date. And if you remember last year, we signed a 10-year contract with the state. Last year's number was originally 14,000, I forget, and change. We had a carryover balance from the previous year, which gave us a total of $16,827.38 in state formula grant monies last year. We spent $17,797.94. So we overspent that last year by $970.56. So Joan, I'm going to suggest that you get with Bradley and figure out how is that deficit handled moving into fiscal year 23.
First, I've heard of it, but thank you.
Well, I took them off the reports that we both receive that you sent to me.
I just haven't looked at them. So I think there was a question about that, but I apologize for that overspending.
Nope. I mean, there's no question about it. It's accurate. He sent the details on it. Mm-hmm. You were also on that email. It listed everything on the state formula grant that was spent. What I think caught us off guard was there was some encumbrance. Am I thinking of the wrong term?
Is that when we have to pay for something in July because it was spent in June?
Or, well, yes, we pay something in July that occurred in fiscal year 22. Okay.
So that could be what was happening. Part of it is we used to use a revolving account to pay for our programs. So when people came in, they paid for line dancing, for chair yoga, for Tai Chi. These were all paid through a revolving account. There was question what was in that revolving account, which I never have found out what that balance is. So that's another account that we need to look at. But when the pandemic hit, we weren't getting money because we were doing things on Zoom and we were doing things, either virtually or anyway, we did a lot of programming. Those programs are paid through the formula grant and obviously overspended. So the budget, there was not a written down budget of what we would be spending for the formula grant. So I apologize for that. A lot of the, like I said, it started with the pandemic and the closure of the center, and we never picked up using a different account. Always paid for line dancing and chair yoga and those kind of things. Now we pay tech support, which is a bigger amount that was paid through a grant through January or through December. So from January to June, we paid the tech support as well. So obviously those are the reasons we went over budget. I will take a look at that and see how much is in the revolving account and make sure that the instructors are paid from the correct account.
Okay. So I think there was almost $800 that was paid in July for activities in June.
Tech support was one, chair yoga was one.
So, I mean, I think that when, you know, I don't know, I'm just trying to find ways to help you so that you can, you know, we need to manage to a budget. And I know that's not our job as the board, but our job is to support you. Okay. So, and help figure out how we get to that point. So
we probably have to charge for tech support, probably have to, you know, make sure that those accounts are the correct accounts. So I apologize. And I will look at that with Bradley next week sometime.
Okay. Let me just share this. If people have enough interest in this, let me just try to help get a little more detail in there. If I can find the right one again. Bear with me for a second, folks. Is this beneficial to people? If you're nodding off, let me know. Okay, so this is all of what we spent in the state formula grant last year. Okay, so when we come down to where have we overspent? So if we keep going down, there's a lot of information. I'm not going to go over this line by any means. But I'm trying to find the encumbered.
So the art class was a big expense, but we didn't have some of the other programs that we would normally have. So, I mean.
So Jen, we look at the encumbered. Okay. So we encumbered in July, $510,000 here. Whoops, that doesn't let me do that. $510. And that was for the tech support. But instead of paying that out on a monthly basis, we let it collect. So if we know at the end of May that we only have X number of dollars left, then we have to skip a class. That way we don't overspend. So it's just a matter of.
Or take it from another account.
But we really didn't have another account to take it from, did we? I mean, we only had 100.
Well, there is a revolving account, but I don't have an accurate finding of that.
So $180 was another encumbrance, and I'm not sure what that was.
That was the chair yoga, I believe.
Okay, and then the other encumbered as Joan explained, at the end of the year, in July, if there are funds that should have been paid out in fiscal year 22, she's able to encumber funds to cover that, but that does come out of that budget in FY 22. So that's why we got a little bit upside down. So we just need to kind of watch that at a more close basis and not let things pile up too much, I guess, without paying out, just to make sure we can track it more accurately. So, go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, just trying to understand for the minute. So just very concisely. So the issue is how to explain that nearly $1,000 deficit in the spending from the state formula grant, how to cover it, or
$970. So Joan will has to go to Bradley and try to determine how is that going to be rectified or balanced. I don't have the answer to that, but
Sure.
Bradley and Ed can work with Joan on that. Okay.
Thanks.
I mean, it's the first time I think in all the years that we've been doing this, Joan, that's happened, right? So
we have trouble spending it. So I think having all these the free programs has hurt us. I mean, we really have to have a accounting of these programs and how much it costs us and how much really can we give away.
And you can determine if we and this is kind of further down on the agenda, but if you can take a look at the programs you're offering, like the tech support. And if you pay X number per hour and you do X hours per month, that's going to cost you this much for the year, right?
Right.
And kind of do that with each one and determine what can you afford to do and what is left over. So, you know, Sandy's money, the volunteer coordinator, some of the bigger items. I guess there was one that from this year, I think it's this year. Here comes Josie. That we spent $500 on mailing maybe for Marcus Printing, or was that something else?
Yes, we have. And that we have done that in the past. Friends has also helped us with that, but I think it was stated that we're trying to use some of our own funds so that Friends will have money for the Future Center. So
I think they have an agreement with Easthampton for nonprofit mailing. So I think you should always go to them. My recommendation as an observer is that you go to them and ask them if they can afford to do that right now, because, you know, if we hadn't paid that. So right now, our state formula grant for this year is already. And are you rolling your eyes? Am I losing you guys yet? So you're going to ask.
Yeah, keep working on it.
Keep going.
You're going to beg for a treasurer soon. Take it away from me. So right now, Marcus, $503. You know, and we've already spent $4,200. Almost $4,300 a state formula grant in the first quarter. So I don't know how much we're getting, but if things that the Friends have nonprofit mailing for, please reach out to them, because you can, as we showed last year, you need those $500. You know, better to pay tech support and let the Friends, or at least approach the Friends on that. I think they have that on purpose to support the mailings.
Well,
right?
We always approach the Friends for the waxing. Every year, the Friends would pay for the waxing of the senior center, and that was discouraged. And that was 14. How much? It was quite a bit of money.
Yep.
It was 1448. So
why was that? I don't know why that was discouraged, and I'm not sure why we pay for waxing our own floors instead of.
So the Friends always paid for it every year to keep up the appearance of the center. And it was brought up at a meeting, and then it was discouraged because they're trying to pool the money so that for the Future Center, they'll be able to buy furniture and appliances and whatever that Friends can donate to the new center. So,
but they definitely, the mailing, they have the nonprofit mailing fund. So that they pay $275 for that in order for you to mail things out. So please.
Right. And the COVID funds, we had money for outreach as well. So we did pay some of the mailing when we had the COVID funds in 2020. So yeah, you're right. There needs to be some juggling of where things are spent from. And there is another account called the revolving account. I just don't know.
No, I know, but right now, but I don't think it's a big account, right? I don't know if it's at the end of the revenue. Have you looked at the revenue reports from the end of last year?
If I did, I can't recollect.
Okay, because they haven't posted the revenues for this year yet. The books are not closed out from last year yet. So, but anyway, I want to just bring it. See, here's the reversed encumbrances. So those were taken off of this year's money. But again, we've already spent and a lot of this. And I don't know, Joan. So obviously Sandy's salary, Mary's final payout, which is great. Myrna does the line dancing.
Yes, she does the line dancing. And prior to this, people paid money that never is enough. Well, she only gets $15 an hour. So hers is covered, but it should go into the revolving account and she should get paid from that account. So that one could be taken out. There's no charge right now for Glenn, who is our Tai Chi person. Now, Richie Mitnick was part of the Memory Cafe, and we weren't able to use our Memory Cafe money. So the $2,000 that are in the Memory Cafe, I mean, he may be able to transfer some of that. I know they used to do line items and, the past accountant, if something was charged, like Sarah Michael is Sarah the Fiddler, she's also from the Memory Cafe. So now that we can hopefully access Highland Valley money, maybe we can, switch some of that over.
Okay, so this Bradley sent this to us. It lists everything that we've spent from the state formula grant by line, that line item. So I was kind of surprised how much we had spent already. So we need to work together to,
Well, Ed said to use that account because we couldn't access the Highland Valley account because we hadn't rectified that.
Yep. So again, I go back to, I'm not sure why the COA pays for their own floors when it's used by voting and everything else. Have we had that discussion with Ed to see if there's funds for the town?
Yes, one year the custodian did do it, but I don't think they want the custodian doing it anymore.
That wasn't my question, is the payment.
So the payment, I have not talked to Ed about the payment of the waxing.
Okay. So, those are just kind of things that's a big chunk out of, however, we don't know what our state formula grant fund is yet. So we're hoping it's based on 2020 census and not 2010 again. Right. So, all right, let me see, Jim, and then.
I just noticed, sort of made me curious. I saw an entry there for Amazon Capital.
It's a bookcase, but that maybe could have gone out of expenses.
Oh, when it said capital, it seems to me that, it's usually financial transactions. I just didn't know.
Oh, well, what's the amount, Janet? I don't know.
I couldn't figure it out. 3,700 or something like that.
Oh, God, no.
$214.
I think that's a bookcase.
Okay, but way over to the other side, Janet.
Yeah, that's a tracking of the total number. It's like an accountant balance here. Let me just show you, Jim.
Oh, okay. So you're going cumulatively down the line.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right, Jonathan?
Yeah, going back to the waxing, and maybe Rini knows the answer to this, but obviously, I would think that much of the senior center needs to be waxed, right? There are wood floors elsewhere, and not just in the senior center.
It's vinyl, vinyl tiles.
Elsewhere?
No, it's vinyl tiles everywhere. You're right.
Oh, including the senior center.
Correct.
Okay, but for something like that, it seems like it'd be a little bit cheaper, at least if it's done with one vendor for the entire building. And if that's the case, then it would seem like the town pays for it with possibly prorating it for, an amount for the senior center. But I'm kind of confused as to why we would be paying for it separate from something for the entire senior centers, one building.
It's a past practice. I apologize. I came in halfway through that story.
Yeah, no. That's okay. I think it was usually paid for by the Friends, and it's, I think.
No, but my question, right. But what I'm saying is, as a matter of economy of scale, no matter who ultimately pays for the senior center's portion of it, that it seems like the town should arrange for the waxing, anything that's maintenance of the floor for the entire building. And then if we are to be charged from our account, from the COA account for our portion of it, then fine. As a matter of economy of scale, it seems like it would be cheaper just doing it for the whole building whenever it's done. One vendor, one time, one person coming one time to do all the floors.
Yeah, I'm not sure the rest of the town hall is wax, but let me ask Rini.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So I think that we have a line item in the general budget for building expense, but I don't know how the senior center gets separated out from that. But I think that would be a good question, I think, for Joan to ask Ed about. And I do think there's a committee now that's called the Cost Efficiencies Committee. So they're centralizing services exactly for that purpose, Jonathan. They've done that with copier leases so that there's not, 5 different departments, paying us a price. They're all centralizing it. So that's another question I think will be important. It's, like the library. You have public coming in, it's used for other purposes. I would find out if the library similarly pays for their own maintenance of the floor. And if they don't, and it's part of some other general maintenance, then I think that it should be part of I don't think it should be paid for separately, but Ed would probably have all that information, and he's on the Cost Efficiencies Committee too.
I agree. I think, building maintenance is such a good thing to have, but it is expensive. And I'm not sure how the library handles it, but I'd be glad to find out, and I will talk to Ed about it.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know that the whole building gets a waxing. It doesn't. It's usually the senior center because it does get a lot of traffic, and especially after voting. So it is multi-use, but yeah. So, and again, it had been paid in different ways. I just want to try to use our funds wisely. And I know it sounds like, Joan, you got some pushback for that particular item. So, but yeah, so speak to Ed, and we'll look forward to your update next month if Janet schedules the meeting properly. Okay. Anything else? So I know it's an unusual. So we're right now, we don't have a treasurer. I don't think, unless I missed your emails, but stepped up and said, I'm happy to be the treasurer. We can get these reports from Bradley all the time. And it just seems like this is just Janet speaking that, it's extra work for Joan. She puts the warrants in, and then she emails them out, and then it's a checks and balances. And then Nancy sometimes was chasing Joan because she missed something. And yeah, it's just a lot of extra work, I think, on Joan's part when the information already exists in the accounting office is what Bradley's job is. So if we can kind of keep tracking things and watching some of the bigger items, I don't know that it's in our purview or in our best interest to spend a lot of time item by item on a monthly basis, maybe on a quarterly basis. But I think that it's a lot, I think, to look at every month, and takes a lot of time out of the meeting. And the information is there from the accountant if we need it. So that's just me speaking. Jonathan.
Janet, can you go back to the first document you shared? I just wanted to comment on that. That's the fiscal year comparison.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I found that very useful. It's a very simple document, but it tells me what the sources are for things. At a glance, I can have some idea. I mean, I don't think this is the last word on it by any means. There has to be other things to supplement this, but it tells me that at a glance that so much money is coming from different sources to support, at least in the large categories, things that the center does, so that I have an idea whenever we're talking about money, funding, that, oh, okay, so much of what the COA does, a certain amount comes from these different sources, so much from the town and so much from grants of different types. And that is very helpful to have that. And to be looking at that whenever we're talking about, when we're breaking it down to, to smaller categories. So again, I thank you for putting that together. I find it very helpful, and it's the type of thing that I've really wanted to take a look at, over the last year.
Good. Yeah, I mean, sometimes simple is better, less is more, or whatever the phrase is. But I think I tried to come up with something that captured what people were asking for without having to track every single line transaction. That's Joan's job. We want to help and support her, not necessarily add to her. So if you look at like the Frida van, the Franklin Regional Transit, so we get a grant for $28,000. So last year we spent $18,622 of that. And that's just the part of the pandemic, and they're just right, Joan, and we didn't use it as much as we had used it in the past, but we have $28,000 in the grant again this year. It's more or less reimbursable. So it's a month by month, quarter by quarter. And I think that working just with and trying to track every single thing, in that line item becomes very complicated, and you kind of lose what the whole purpose of the grant is. You get caught up in the minutia sometimes. And then we receive ARPA funds of $50,000. We're going to try to talk about that in a little bit to talk again. We have that $50,000. I believe it's in our bank. I think it stays in our bank. It doesn't get returned. We don't have to submit things back to get that money. We received the funds, and we have to come up with a plan for that. So, or Joan does, and Ed does, and the select board does with our great guidance, I think. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So great. So I'll try to keep some of this updated. If, I'll fill in the memory cafe as soon as we find out about the state formula grant. But we will not have any carryover for the state formula grant. Obviously, we're starting in the hole. So, but I expect we'll have more than the $14,000 that we had from last year, 14,490, I think it is, somewhere around there. So, okay. All right.
Was the financial report that our treasurer prepared an official document, or was that just a report to us of what the records from the town would reflect? Because sometimes I had the concern that as an advisory board, some of the financial reports were so granular, it was really beyond our need to know almost, But in other words, is our committee, is the Council on Aging, is that report that our treasurer reports the official accounting documents of the Council on Aging? Or is it merely duplicating?
Well, it's duplicating. So the official documents are what Bradley can pull from the system. And that's what he...
Then I would, endorse what Jonathan was saying, that kind of summary report that you were preparing, I think is sufficient for our purposes and really more informative for our purposes. So I would echo what Jonathan said.
Phew, thank God. All agreed with me. Wait a minute.
Say anything you want to.
Make a note that Jonathan, Jim, Susan, Sylvia, we all agree that is sufficient at a glance, kind of. I think we spent too much time getting into too much minutia, as I was
Janet?
Yeah. Yes, Jonathan.
I nominate you to be our new quasi-treasurer.
She's got enough things.
I'm happy to step down.
That's why it's quasi.
I'm happy to step down as the COA board chair. Do we have any nominations? Because I can't do both, but I can put a document together with like that, a simple document like that. I can probably pull together with Joan, right, Joan?
Yes, but I do appreciate, I think, the check and balance that, you're looking at the line by line and saying, well, this, where could this have gone from? I think that's important, but we could do that in a meeting before the monthly meeting.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that either collectively, or just say, how are we doing on this particular line item, and take a look at that, or do it quarterly. But, I think it's important to kind of take a look at, for us to have a discussion with you, Joan, and try to help the checks and balances and say, why are we doing this differently than we did in previous years? And how can we do this better, so we don't get into a situation where we have a negative carryover. Okay, so there's no official report to approve. So we're going to move on to Joan's director's report. Is everybody good? Any other questions before I move forward? And thank you for your support today. I appreciate that. I do have your best interest in mind, always. And my sanity is a secondary thing. But. Okay, so everybody gets this in advance. I don't know that we have to line item it. Anybody have any questions on anything that's included in here? I understand the elder abuse had a great turnout. The one that was held at the country club. So I think did Jim, you have a hand up, or just Jonathan? Jonathan?
Yeah, sorry. On the financial elder abuse seminar. Who sponsored that?
Polish National Credit Union.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought that was very well done, actually, and very helpful. It was informative. I can't say that I learned something shocking, but it was great to hear it all presented at one time, and that was very, very good. I enjoyed it.
Good.
I found it interesting that around the same time, I think a financial elder abuse seminar was held in Easthampton and reported on, I believe it was in the E-Minder.
The reminder I saw an article.
Yeah, and it said 20 people attended. So this is pretty good. If we had 40 people, not if that excludes, the speakers and stuff.
Do you have a head count, Joan, on that exactly or no?
Yes, there is. Do I have it with me? No.
Okay.
But it's in our database. And I want to say it was 44, but I could be wrong. But I did fail to put in something that happened a day or two later. And Rini, I haven't talked to you about it. We had gotten a call from somebody that was concerned that they weren't receiving their money and that they were living in a group home that they didn't receive their checks, etc. So as a what do they call it? I had to notify the authorities. So I called Ian, I called Rini, and she suggested to call Highland Valley, which I did, a mandated reporter. So, and I did get a letter back from Highland Valley that this particular case was okay. This woman is in a community home and under a different, auspices. There's somebody taking care of her and her finances. So it wasn't, I shouldn't say it wasn't true. In her mind, it was true, but it was all on the up and up. It wasn't abuse because she's signed into this facility where they handle her finances. But we did get a complaint, and that I had to follow up on being a mandated reporter. And Highland Valley did send me a letter.
Okay. So whoever needs to be in the loop on that, whether it's Ed or the select board or our liaison or whomever, everybody's.
So Ian, the chief, knows about it. I'm not sure. I don't know that Ed knows about it, but I will fill them in. I did keep the person's name and phone number.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you, Joan. Okay. And then some of your goals and challenges. I know I had my wish list too. So on the agenda. So I'm going to also try to go through that.
I will say that FRITA has been, we had to locate the FRITA contract. It got filed away. And so anyway, luckily they have some new people there and they, followed through it. Where's the contract, et cetera. It was found and sent and the paperwork that needs to be in is being handled. More training is being done for our drivers so that they're up to date. So there has been a little bit extra time and energy put into the FRITA workers. Everybody has to be quarried, including myself and volunteers that use the schedule and any other staff. So, I mean, we spent a lot of hours on the FRITA program as we should.
Okay, great. All right. Let me just say, I'm taking a quick list here. So I know the trips are always a big hit, and you had some great trips this past summer, right? So that was
our last one was 2 weeks ago, and they're going on a small bus trip tomorrow. I guess before my time, they used to use the 14 passenger van to go local trips. So they're going on a foliage trip tomorrow, but it does take our vehicle away from town for a day. So that can be challenging, although we have volunteer drivers that helped with a couple that, needed to get other places while the van is out of town. So anyway.
The priority always has to be like the doctor's appointments and medical.
It does. It does. And it may be just a quarterly trip, but I mean, we used to do a luncheon or something with a group.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, great. So Memory Cafe, can I?
Yes.
Let me just see. I'm going to see if I have your. Okay.
So the evaluation was due the 15th. I did do it yesterday and sent it in. Of the 12 cafes that were scheduled, 9 happened. Well, I shouldn't say that. 9. One was canceled in January. We were closed due to the rise in COVID numbers. And in February and March, no one came. So we didn't get any reimbursement for 3 months. Then when we did start getting reimbursement, the way the grant is set up, it comes from 2 sections. One is a Title III-E and Title III. One's for caregivers and one is for, one is consumers, it's a Title III-B, and one is for caregivers, which is a Title III-E. So they split it up and gave us, a full amount for the first 3 programs because we had both caregivers and recipients. Then we missed 3 months, but they did give us administrative costs because we did plan them even though they didn't happen. Then in the next 2 months, we did have caregivers. There were 3 months that we didn't have any recipients, but we did have other seniors there. So they only gave us partial payment. They gave us $156 or $157 because we didn't fulfill the target population.
And Joan, does that cover just the administrative portion of the program, the $157?
So $157, since we were able to get Sandy paid out of the wage line and the formula grant, right now it's hoping to pay for if we have entertainment, which like Sarah the Fiddler is $200. So if we only got, luckily she's one of the ones that we get the full $333. So $200 goes to Sarah. And then, we've had 3 or 4 other programs where there was a cost involved, $100 or something like that comes from the program. And then if there's food involved, which there is food at every cafe, but until now, we haven't been able to access that money. So now we'll be able to access it.
Okay, so the submission and we got that. Okay. Because I know that we did partner with Golden Moments, and I was just at the beginning. Is that reflected in here somewhere? Do we say that we did a
yes.
Okay.
It's let's see.
There it is up there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't know if everybody got a chance to read this. I do apologize. I know I threw a lot of stuff at you guys beforehand, and
I will say, I've been pleased with the development of the program. It's very difficult when you're starting up, initiating anything new. We feel there's a need for it, but we don't have the people, I don't think, are still feeling like they want to come to the center and maybe publicize that they have somebody in their family with memory issues. Quite frankly, I think it's a good program and we have a good place for it. They're going to give us 3 more months. They didn't promise, they said they'd give it to us for the year, but they want us to show in the next 3 months that we can get both caregivers and recipients there.
So I sent out a couple emails last week to you, Joan. I know you said today you've gotten a lot of emails from me lately. One of them, I pulled a few things from actually the MCOA or the toolkit that is provided through MCOA. And it was one of the words, and I'm just trying to see if I can find it. One of the language basically said it's really impossible. It's very difficult, as you've been saying, Joan, for the last year, to get people to come and to admit that they have this
issue.
Yeah, it's even worse than an issue, right? So, so I know that Sandy has reached out to
Julie Dickinson. It was 3 different places that she.
So do you have any? So I'm just curious. It's great that she reached out. So I'm just wondering, what was the result of the outreach?
She did find out that one of the programs had a new director, that one was leaving and there was a new director. And actually, Kelly from Highland Valley was happy to hear that because she hadn't even heard that there was a change in personnel. Right.
Can you talk a little bit about the 3 groups that Sandy reached out to and what kind of feedback and what the next steps are?
I apologize. I don't have, Sandy handled it, and I see Sandy once a week about, and I don't have that right in front of me. I know there was a list of 3 and she reached out to 3 and she made connect. She sent them a flyer. But I really can't report on what she did and what she found out. I apologize.
So I'm going to make a suggestion, and this is just me with my former managerial hat on, that if you ask someone that reports to you to do something, that you ask her to put a follow-up in writing. So when you don't have time to see one another, because it's important that you reached out once, but I don't think it shouldn't be the end of it. That's, again, my thought. You had 3 good contacts to reach out to, and I thought they were going to be able to provide more than just send them a flyer for the next one, but be able to give some guidance and some recommendations and develop a relationship. So I guess because Joan's responsible for the Memory Cafe, I'm going to encourage you to ask Sandy to, when she does do something on behalf of the cafe, that you ask her for some kind of write-up so you're aware of what transpired, because just to make the calls and not have an action plan afterwards may not be the desired result that you would want.
I agree.
Okay. So we don't know. Go ahead. Jim, did you start to say something?
Jim Palermo, but you're on mute, Jim.
You're muted. Jim, you're muted.
He's still muted.
There I am. Yeah. I was just going to say, how do we compare programmatically, if that's the word, with what's being offered at other memory cafes? I mean, I know we offer entertainment and so forth, but are there memory cafes in the area that might draw more people than we do? And if so, what kind of services or programming do they offer?
So I only have 2 that I have witnessed or heard about. One is in Hamden, Mass, and I did attend it. They also had a facility that was connected to them, or a visiting nurse, one of those agencies that was connected to them. So they would do the programming, they would bring their folks. I attended that within the last year, and their numbers obviously had dropped because of the pandemic, where they used to have 20 people, they had 6 people. And so I don't think things have not revived since the pandemic. The other one that just started this year was in Huntington. Now, Huntington, I don't know if you've been to their center. They have a big auditorium. They have a big stage, and they have room to have 2 meetings at the same time. So while they're having music or some pet therapy or, a program with the care recipient, they take the caregivers aside and they give them information and support. So they're able to have 2 things happening at once. So it gives caregivers a little respite plus some information, which would be ideal. As you know, we have just the one room. We do hand out information. Actually, most of the memory cafes, I start with some discussion about memory issues or the handout that's present for that month. And I've tried we had arts and crafts. We did have the pet therapy, actually thinking about nutrition and some kind of baking or that kind of thing in a group versus music. So there will be some hands-on, and there has been some hands-on programs as well, which I think this month there will be.
Like, for example, are any of the larger COAs offering a memory cafe? Like, for example, Northampton?
I mean, Jim, I think she though did answer. Those are the two that are in their area. So to answer your question, no, it doesn't appear.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm getting at.
I think
Janet.
South Hadley has one, right, Greenie? Is it South Hadley that has one? There's somebody, it's Hadley or South Hadley that has one. I think it's
I'm not sure.
I don't remember.
I don't remember South Hadley having one.
No?
Yeah.
Jim, maybe be more clear if that's not what you're getting at, then.
Well, I'm just wondering whether we have the resources to really even present a meaningful memory cafe. It seems to me that we might need some people who are trained in dealing with people with memory issues or Alzheimer's, a nurse or some. In other words, and what I'm basing this on is I know somebody who has a husband who is, he doesn't have Alzheimer's, but he's coming out of a stroke very slowly. And the comment I got was that, it's just so much work to get him, ready, that she was looking for information, that she was, dealing with and she was a nurse too, but that she needed guidance and so forth. So I'm wondering if one of the reasons that people aren't showing up is whether or not the program is sufficient for them to make the effort, frankly. I mean, I know we've got the money, but do we have the wherewithal to actually do it? And I asked about Northampton because they seem to be, very well off financially. And I would be surprised. I was surprised that I get their newsletter and stuff. And I was surprised that I didn't see anything in there about their having a memory cafe. So that's why I was asking.
I don't really know what to tell you. I know that we tried to get an outreach worker through Highland Valley and we're not able to. And so we tried this memory cafe because other towns were trying it and they were successful and we were successful in getting the grant, but maybe you're right. Maybe it's not appropriate for our center. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't mean to be critical of you. I mean, I think it's great what you're doing. We've got a very small facility. We need more room. But I'm just wondering whether, we're capable of really putting on a memory cafe that would attract the numbers of people that we want. But I'm not critical at all. I just amazed at what you do and very appreciative of it. But
And I'm not sure that we're looking for numbers, even if we got two people and two caregivers. I will send out the toolkit that MCOA has provided, because first it talks about how very difficult it is for people to come to the reality and admit that they have some kind of dementia. And then secondly, we need to do more marketing. So if we could create a brochure, it talks about it, who's doing memory assessments. I mean, it's a neurology department at various locations and various hospitals. So we create a brochure, get it out to those facilities or even some local doctors that we know of, so that they know where the cafe is and when it exists. I think it is a big undertaking. And I think that we need to plan, as Joan did at the beginning, plan out like 6 months, or say the brochure says every third Thursday of the month. And then, some of the examples would be such and such. And then if we can also continue to follow up with those three, I think what appeared to be very good contacts that Highland Valley provided to us because they want us to be successful. I mean, even if we reach 3 people, it's not a volume deal. It's really reaching a population that can benefit from this. And people don't run out and say, oh, good, let me go to the memory cafe, Sylvia.
I have begun to put together, and I'll try to finish it and send it to you all, to you and Joan, a list of neurologists in our area, because I think that's the target. At one point, we talked about the very beginning of targeting doctors and offices and hair places, and we did. I mean, I remember going to the urgent care and the rehab place. And they did put the information in the back, not in the front, in the back for their patients, when the patient can see it. The idea of the flyer that you're talking about, the brochure, needs to be in the back when they're receiving services, but also in the front when they arrive to make an appointment, because they're probably somebody else makes the appointment and then the patient comes later on. So in both places. And target, but we didn't do it in a consistent way, targeting these places. Like, every month, who's coming, what's going to happen, continue sending that information to these places. So I have started looking into a list of neurologists that we can begin to approach, along with the other list that I sent a while ago. I think you all have it.
And Sylvia, I did send 2 links, one for Bay State and one for Cooley Dickinson of the neurology departments, because not all neurologists deal with memory assessments. So it's, I think even if we start with a targeted group, and it's not just send a flyer to reach out to have a brochure. I mean, the doctor has to be convinced that their client might benefit from this. And that's all they can do is, it's not something a caregiver is going to read. We want to build, if we can build those relationships, I think. And I know that, I don't know if part of Sandy's job description, Joan, was the Memory Cafe and the marketing of the Memory Cafe. And she's pretty creative. I think she's done some nice work on the flyers to create more of a holistic, an all-inclusive flyer with the third Thursday and some of the things and goals of the cafe. So those are just some of my ideas. It probably is a lot of work. The other thing they said in the toolkit is, which I was kind of surprised about, was that they don't recommend having a medical discussion for the caregivers because they need a break from it. It was just an intro. If you haven't read the toolkit, please take a little time to go through it and see some of the suggestions. And that way, I think I got a little bit better understanding of the challenges that we have. But we've got to reach out to the contacts that Highland Valley gave us more than once. We have to develop the relationships, and we have to try to reach out to the neurologists or who do memory assessments that might have the clientele to bring to us. So
what I will say is there's several couples. One that first came to the Memory Cafe didn't come back to that, but comes to bingo every week. So even though they don't feel like they want to be part of the Memory Cafe, they feel welcome in the senior center, and they are doing something with their spouse that's simple, and they can do it together. So, we are developing different things. We're opening the center to different people. And I think, in the long run, we're going to have more benefits from having it than, just the monthly cafe.
Jonathan.
I tend to agree with Jim that we are limited as to what we can do, I think, with the Memory Cafe, and that's with all due understanding what you're saying, Janet, about the toolkit, and that Highland Valley does feel that these things can work and that our community is one that can make it work. But we are having problems, and I'm not sure all of them can be overcome. And I hope that, and I'm not sure in the long run, as useful, as helpful as Memory Cafe may be to some people, I don't think it's going to be the most important program that maybe we should be looking at when we talk about future needs. I was impressed by South Hadley, and I don't know much about it, but when some of us on the New Senior Center Exploratory Subcommittee of the COA visited South Hadley New Senior Center a few months ago, I was impressed with the fact that they have a full-time, I don't think it's full-time, maybe it's half-time, social worker on their staff, dealing mainly with needs of older people. I'm not sure that we can afford that in the future, but it's something to think about. And it's just one thing that I think goes a little bit further. And again, just one thing that might go further than, say, a memory cafe in serving some of the problems that older people face. And it wouldn't just be memory issues, of course. So I would just like to keep that on the back burner, as it were, in our discussions about future needs and stuff, and thinking about what we can do to help with some of these issues. And I guess, we've got the grant, so let's do what we can, the Memory Cafe for now, and then reassess, if it's something we think we can build upon or want to, perpetuate. I do have a question just for the minutes here. And now I know why Jim asked a lot of questions in the past. Otherwise, I'd say, do I really need to know? But seriously, I do want to make sure I understand the 3 months that we were going to try to get, or that we were going to be paid for. What are those 3 months that I don't know which months, but what are we talking about? Oh, we're talking about the 3 months
was not paid for because the center was closed, so it was canceled.
Yeah, no, and I understand about those 3 months. But those are the 3 months you're talking about that we would try, that we might get paid for?
No, we will not get paid for those. We're all paid for 1 year. We did not, there was a report that went out, and we've got paid for 9 of the 12 months, but some were only partial payment.
Yes, and I understand that, but I heard something later on in the discussion.
Yeah, Joan,
about,
you mentioned
we're guaranteed 3 months. What is that about?
Oh, so Kelly and I reached out to talk about the closing up the year, and she said, with the accounting and all, they really were strongly saying that if we didn't have caretakers, caregivers, and care recipients, that they couldn't see how we could keep it going. I mean, even though they've given us the grant for the year, but it's only reimbursable if we get the right people at the Memory Cafe. So if we try it for another 3 months and we're unable to get anybody, then we may have to reconsider it for the next 9 months or whatever. Okay,
and so it's we're not getting we haven't been getting the caregivers, or we haven't been getting the consumers. Which haven't we been getting?
Caregivers and recipients.
Oh, but I thought there was one. I thought
there were six or seven times we did get the full payment.
Right. But who were we not getting for those when we didn't get the full payment?
If we don't have any caregivers and recipients, so if there's not a spouse and a husband and wife there, and with one with memory issues, then we don't get even just one couple. If we don't have
both, you need both, Jonathan. You need a caregiver.
Right, I understand that, but which of the two have we not been getting?
Care recipients.
The recipients. So we've been getting the caregivers, or
we haven't really been getting either, Jonathan. Right?
Okay. We haven't been getting people who want to listen to music, or okay.
Correct. And like Jim was just saying before, if, we'll give it this 3 months, and if we don't do anything differently, the results are going to be the same. So we have to decide whether we want to do something differently, or as Jim said, maybe it's not where we should be putting our focus after that.
And it's a 2-year grant. So then in May, we can reapply for a social worker if that's what people decide that's what we need.
Okay, Rini?
I just want to say that I had lunch today with a person who's a friend of mine who is a senior citizen from Easthampton. And her perception is that Southampton has so much more to offer than Easthampton. They just cut the funding for rides in Easthampton, that Southampton is cheaper. And also just got, she was aware of the program at the country club. And she just, felt like Southampton has a lot to offer. I just want to say that I think that getting people with cognitive problems, particularly dementia, is probably one of the most difficult populations to reach. like Jim said, it takes a tremendous amount of effort to get people out of the house. If you have a bad morning with agitation or difficulties getting people dressed and so forth, it's just not going to be worth the effort, frankly. And I think that people aren't willing to. My sister was just diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. She's 80, and she will not wear her hearing aid. She will, she's adamant about things, about what she does want to do, and what she doesn't want to do is not necessarily capable of making those decisions either. So I just want to say that I think it's a very, very difficult population to reach. And without an outreach person at the senior center, it makes it even more difficult. So I just want to say that it's not for lack of trying, I don't believe. I just think that we're in a difficult spot, small town, no outreach coordinator, difficult population. It's just tough, I think.
So we'll give it our 3 months, Joan, and see where we are to reevaluate at that point. So, I mean, I know you've put a lot of effort into it to date. So, Sylvia.
Wild and crazy thought. To be able to use the money, half of it to have an part-time outreach person, and part-time have the memory cafe.
So the grant isn't written that way, but
temporarily use the money to hire somebody to do the outreach, and then just do the memory cafe, not both at the same time.
We can't use the money for something we didn't apply for, Sylvia, I think is what John is trying to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So if it's not part of the grant, I mean, even if we just wanted to bring caretakers in and give them some reprieve, or a focus group for them to talk about their emotions like we did a couple years ago, that doesn't even cover it. We need the caregiver and the care receiver. And if we don't get both, we don't get reimbursed. So it is a huge challenge. And I mean, if we don't do anything differently in the next 3 months, we'll be back here having the same conversation. Mm-hmm. So see if we can try something at all different, I guess is,
I don't want to belabor the thought. I did reach out to the Congregational Church because that's where DopaFit has gone. And I was hoping that they would bring their program to us in October and share a meal and bring both partners. And unfortunately, it's not going to work out because all their equipment is at the church. So they can't bring it to and the woman is leaving. She's got some illnesses and she's leaving as of November 1st. So that collaboration or partnership didn't work.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody for their feedback. Sylvia, one last thing, then we got to move on because it's.
Yeah, another wild thought. I know there are schools of social work that place their students, in places to do certain work for a semester. Can we do outreach like Smith College? I know they have School of Social Work. Which other college has it? I don't remember.
Just like Rini did for the nurses.
Yeah, Westfield State. Some of them require there be a preceptor with the same level or higher of education. So we had students from Smith College when I was the director at Coley Dickinson, but we had a social worker who was their preceptor. And their visits are billable and all that. So Westfield does, Springfield College does. It's definitely worth asking. They may not require, their faculty might be able to be their preceptor like I was for the senior center.
Okay. All right. All good thoughts. Thanks everybody for sharing. So we had an interview today, right, with the volunteer coordinator. So that was good, or with an applicant, and we have one next Wednesday, correct?
Yes, and thank you, Jim and Janet, for being there. And I think Josie's going to try and be there next week, hopefully, or Sue. I'm not sure if you're available, Sue, next week. It's the 12th. Actually, Josie's not available because that's her birthday.
Right.
So,
is that 1 o'clock on?
No, it's going to be. It's 11 a.m.
Oh, 11 a.m. Okay, I can do that. Okay,
so Sue and Jim and I. So Janet, unless you want to be there.
As long as at least 2 hours.
There's 3.
That's fine, I think.
So I'd love to make a decision after that interview next week. I'd love to make a decision to hire somebody. It's been 3 months with that position vacant. And does, again, any time that we have a vacancy, it puts a lot more on the director. So we'd like to fill that vacancy as sooner than later.
Do they provide references to both candidates?
I believe there were references on this. I think it's part of the application. So maybe I should follow up with references.
It might be a good idea if they've already agreed to let it go before decisions made.
Okay.
So can I ask?
Josie, yes, go ahead.
You have 2 candidates.
Yes.
You've interviewed one this week or today.
Yes.
Is that right? And the next one is next week. Now,
right, at 11 o'clock, the 12th.
All right. So I think it's important that you have the same people doing the interviewing rather than having a different group do one and, for each candidate, if you want to be able to make a really fair comparison.
Yeah, Josie, what I said is if 2 out of 3 were the same, you think that's not, you think it has to be 100%?
Oh, well, at least 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's got to be overlap there.
So yes, if Susan comes on board, it'll be 2 out of 3.
Okay.
Because myself and Jim were there today.
All right.
Okay. All right. Then as far as the ARPA funds that we received for $50,000, Josie, you want to put your hand down?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Do we have any I thought maybe we could set up a couple support people with Joan and see if we can do some brainstorming on how the best usage of ARPA funds, and maybe have Ed be involved. And I don't know if Rini has extra time as a select board liaison to kind of come up with some ideas on, do we worry about doing the ARPA funds this year? Do we wait till next year? I think the discussions just have to start taking place. Joan, what's your feeling on that?
So now that we're saying we need a social worker and or an outreach person, could that $50,000 be put towards staff? I haven't looked at the guidelines.
I don't think there are guidelines specifically.
Is there a deadline as to when all the money must be used?
We have $50,000 in our account and it doesn't go away.
So maybe we should, once we hire a volunteer coordinator, maybe we should look at our social service outreach dimension that's been missing forever.
I think that sounds like a good idea, if you can use the money for that. Unfortunately, with a lot of grants, it's so specific and it's something non-staff wise, but $50,000 would give you a good leg up on that.
Then the question becomes, what happens when you, to the position when you run out of the 50,000 after say 2 years, 3 years, whatever.
Life is going to change a lot in the next 2 or 3 years if everything goes forward with the new center. So, I mean. But just building a senior center doesn't guarantee that you're able to have other things along with it. Obviously, it's an argument for having it, but it's not automatically going to be there, I don't think.
So is there a subgroup, Jonathan? I'd like to, because this could take probably the next 45 minutes. So I think we need to take some of our business offline and then report back in at the next meeting. Would people be interested in working with Joan, whether it's this or whether other ideas, to try to come up with some suggestions for doing this? Do we have volunteers? Jim and Sylvia and Rini and Joan. We can't get more than, we can do 4, but does that work, Joan, for you?
That's excellent. Thank you.
Jim, Rini, Sylvia, Joan. Okay. Because, we could, each one, what I've kind of come to the conclusions as our meetings, we need to take some items offline and then report back. And it just, I think, makes for a more productive meeting. And then we can talk about it. Is everybody good with that? And you can meet between now and our next meeting. Does that work?
Sure.
Great. Good. Thank you. All right. Yeah, you'll come up with other things too, I'm sure. So, all right. So feasibility committee update is the next on the agenda. So We did select the vendor I believe I sent out to everyone. Abacus was selected. It was a unanimous vote after being narrowed down to 2. We had met with them once already. We are meeting with them again tomorrow. We are walking 4 properties, prospective properties, and visiting 3 town hall buildings, and having a meeting. It's going to be a very busy day, and I'm glad it wasn't this morning to walk properties. And then once we do that, and at the same time during our meeting, just to kind of give you an update tomorrow, what some of the agenda items are. We'll probably have a brief discussion on the properties that we visit, but I think Abacus has to kind of go back, do an analysis, and come back to the committee is what I would expect to have happen. We need to start working on the community engagement and outreach for the community. That's got to start running parallel to everything else, so we can get input from not just the seniors, but the townspeople as to what their feelings are, and probably get some, whether it's going to be a survey, whether we're going to put on displays, it'll be different stages. So, but we really have to get the community engaged. Probably get a quick update from Rini on the Public Safety Committee and where they stand at this point in time. And we're going to take a few minutes to review the program questionnaire that I think I sent out to everybody, and we will take a look at that for a couple minutes right now too. So anything else, Rini or Joan, to add to that? I mean, it's kind of we're going to have a busy day tomorrow.
I think that covers it.
Okay. So I wanted to share this with you and kind of get some thoughts. We have submitted this to, let me make sure I have the right one here. Yes. Sent this to Abacus. So myself, Joan, Rini, and Darcy all sat down collectively, and Abacus had sent us this format and asked us to fill things in about our programs at the senior center. And in the RFQ, we had a lot of details about our current situation, our wishful, hopeful offers for the future. So I think the part that I thought was kind of important that I wanted us to talk about and think about, and Jonathan had sent me an email as well, and to talk about kind of the future. So this is one of what is the current staffing, what's full-time, what's part-time, and how is it likely to evolve in the future. And we were in the meeting and we're like, well, we really haven't talked about that much. So even as a board, we haven't really talked about kind of our vision for the future. And so ironically, Jonathan was messaging me at the same time, similar time frame. I don't know if he has a link to my emails and he's not sharing that with me. No, I'm kidding. But if you look at what we've been looking at. So right now, what we submitted for now, we have a director who works 26 hours. We don't have an assistant director. We have a part-time program coordinator. We have a position for a part-time volunteer coordinator. We have van drivers, 3 positions, only 2 filled. Outreach coordinator, we do not have. Cook, we do not have. Custodian, we do not have. So outreach coordinator, I would see as outreach coordinator / kind of social services person, all inclusive from our previous discussion. So we at our meeting, we said, well, by 2025, which is only 3 years away, if this does move forward, then we would like to add an assistant director part-time. We'd like to increase the hours of the program coordinator. We'd like to increase the hours of a volunteer coordinator. The van drivers are the Frida van. I mean, that's kind of it's a great grant. We don't have to pay for a van. If things increase and for some reason we need to get a van of our own, we can do that. We can think about that down the road. Outreach coordinator, we would want 1 at 18 hours. So that's kind of a part-time. A cook, if we're going to get a commercial kitchen, then we need somebody to prep food and prepare food. So a part-time person, less than 19 hours. And then a custodian, right now we have probably 3 hours shared If we had our own building, we'd probably need one 68 hours that may be shared with another facility. But so that's kind of, did everybody receive this okay?
I don't recall seeing it myself.
I know I sent you a bunch of stuff, and I may have gone out. I may have even gone out either yesterday morning or this morning, because I actually ended up saving it to draft on it because I thought I had sent it. I found it under draft. So
yeah, I don't recall seeing it, and
okay.
it could, you may have said it, but I may have deleted it.
Okay. Yeah, I know. That's
yeah.
It was sent yesterday.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yesterday?
I didn't see it either.
okay.
I did
go out yesterday, Sylvia? Okay.
Excuse me. Yeah, I have it. I printed it and I read it last night.
Okay. So I can try to resend it later. We are going to review it probably, or Abacus has this, but I'm looking and I'm asking for another subcommittee to kind of work on developing a strategy for our future needs from this committee, and what your vision might be in addition to this or supplementing this. So Jonathan, I know you were going to chat a little bit about your thoughts.
Yeah, if we have time today, because it's just more than 2 minutes. I mean, it's not long, but it's certainly more than 2 minutes. I wanted to share a document that's kind of an outline of things. That's it's merely a draft, but it's a starter for just one way of looking at things, which people can, we can revise in many ways, but it's just one way of looking at things, introducing some of the issues that I see with an emphasis on funding, not just the needs.
Yeah, this is just, this will obviously impacts funding right here. So if you go back through your emails from yesterday, you would have received it. Take a look at it. I send it out to the group email. So yeah. I believe you should have received it, and I can resend it to the group email.
Yeah. I will say, having heard some of the conversations earlier in the end of last year and earlier this year, Janet, on the new senior center, and having visited others, not much of this was not new to me, but I thought it was a very good document, and having it all in one place is very useful, I think, for all of us to kind of envision what changes there might be, at least the things that we would want to do with the new senior center, depending on when we build it and how much how large it is, what we're able to do. So I thank you for sharing it with us.
Okay, and I'll send it out again if people for some reason didn't get through to you guys. So
I'd like to be on the committee, but I would also like to kind of say some things just about our role, on such a committee. Are you looking at it as needs and funding going forward?
Well, this would just be kind of a short-term strategy on where we see the senior center, short-term, long-term strategy. I think just brainstorming and bringing that to discussion at the board level is important. I don't know what your role. We would then certainly present it at some point in time as our recommendations.
I understand that, but as a committee, are you looking? I don't see how we can discuss where we're going without having an idea of the funding. It's already come up in several ways today about sources of funding in your treasurer's report, several things that Joan talked about. And then again, in the what you just touched on the feasibility committee questionnaire, about the new senior center and just new staff. For example, if you total up all the hours, it's like 2 1/3 in 2025. The number of hours of paid staff would be about 2 1/3 times what it is now. And I hope we can do that. I think it all can be justified. But I hate to have discussion of anything without having at the same time in the back of our minds, and maybe not even in the back, certainly the foreground of our minds, some of the funding issues that might come up. We can't decide those now, but I just would like people to make sure that that our discussions aren't for naught, that when we talk about what we'd like to see, we're being realistic and we're at least thinking about some of the funding issues. Where can the money come from and so forth, knowing that we're not going to answer all those questions now. That's going to be answered later. But I just don't see how you can talk about one without the other.
Yeah, I think, Jonathan, if I could just for a second to address it, I think so I look at it differently. Maybe that's the difference between people. I look at it as our funding needs, and you look at it as our funding issues. So to me, this is, if we're going to make these steps, this is the funding that we're going to need in the future. And whether we present that to the select board, whether we make recommendations on how to support some of that funding, that's part of, I think, just putting this overview future strategy together. But this is what we need to accomplish this. This is the funding that we need. And then work together to figure out where can we get various fundings to address those needs.
I'm hearing different things. Because I'm not sure we're talking about different things. It just seems like we're talking about what the needs are, both with the senior center, what's in the document, and beyond that for other things, as well as, and then the funding for it. And that's it becomes the same thing ultimately.
Yeah, I see it as one of the same things. So when we look at the program requirements from document, we don't have anything in 2040 because we haven't, and kind of 2030 is pretty much the same as 2025 because we really haven't taken the time as a board to really look and see if this is really going to be a reality. Then what are our needs going to be? What are our funding needs going to be to bring it forward? Rini? Again,
I just think that we have to do due diligence. In the last 2 years of being on the select board, we have given new contracts to the water superintendent and also the highway superintendent, who were previously salaried employees, but now they have a contract and they're getting more money. There are positions that have been increased. We used ARPA funds to hire a conservation agent, which will fund that position for 2 years. It'll give the Conservation Commission time to be able to develop funding beyond those 2 years. So I think what we need to do is we need to really decide what positions are critical. Where the percentage of seniors in town is only going to be going up in the next 10 years. So we just have to decide, what positions are critical, in what particular order. We have to compare what other towns have for staffing so that we can present a case for increasing and have an outreach person, increase the hours of having a program coordinator, whatever we decide to do. So I think it starts with what is our vision for the center and for services that we offer seniors in town, and then decide what funding source we'll use to go ahead and fund what we decide is in the best interest of the seniors. So I think it's a little bit of both, but the most important thing I think is to do due diligence and do a homework and not just to come in and ask for a particular level of service without understanding how we compare to other people, what are our numbers, the data, because people will support it if we show the need. And that includes, doing either a Survey Monkey or asking seniors, what services do you want and need? So I think that, there's a lot of, like Joan said, there's going to be a lot of changes in the next several years. And I think that we just have to apply for the funding. And I think seniors deserve it.
Go ahead, Jonathan. You don't have to raise your hand.
No, it's hard to refute any of that. And I certainly agree with the sentiments. It's just that I really don't know where all the funding is going to come from. So it's not just making the argument for the need. And I, as a member of this advisory board, I don't think can really comment on things or make recommendations if I'm not taking that into consideration. The last thing I'd want to have happen is that if, in order to have assured funding for many years going forward for certain programs that we think are essential, that if that's going to mean are going before the town and asking for essentially an increase in the property tax rate, then it puts. I'd like to be able to make an informed decision as to what it is that we can reasonably ask for people. I have no preconceived notions about what's doable and what's not, but I do know, just looking at at what's in this staffing projections, that if we increase it by 2 1/3 times a number of hours, and we increase the salary, which I think we want to do for at least for the positions that we now have for several of them, then we're talking about a lot of money just there going forward. And that doesn't even take into consideration what's going to go into the senior center, doesn't take into consideration some of the other programs that we talked about today that don't even appear in this in this document. So I just think that when we talk about priorities, that we also be talking about that we have an idea as to the funding issues at the same time, because that helps to determine what is doable and can realter the actual priorities. So
I agree, but I wouldn't want to put a brake on something because we're not sure we're going to have funding for that. I think that I would prefer to look at it like, what is in the best interest of seniors in Southampton, and really decide that we all think that we need to do this in this year, and then within 3 years do this. And if we find out that there isn't funding for that, then maybe we would consider hiring somebody for 24 hours a week instead of 36 hours a week, or supplement the funding for this. I think there are a variety of sources of funding. Nobody knew that we were going to end up with $1.8 million worth of ARPA funding, which is giving money to the Open Space Committee, which is giving money for lots of different things. So I think you can't go wrong when you actually decide what's in the best interest of seniors, and then seek out funding. If you find out that you're going to have to fall short here, then you revise what you're looking for. But I wouldn't put the brakes on something that early on because you're not sure about funding. I think our job is to find out what's in the best interest of seniors in Southampton. I used to tell my kids, the will is a way.
Even in the next year. So I know that Joan has shared some information about her career, correct, Joan? So in the next year, you don't know exactly if we'll have a new director or not. But if we do, if we get a chance to expand the program, if we go from, to 31 hours and meet the hour, stay open, keep the center open the hours that the town hall is open, and then maybe expand it to partial things on Fridays. And I mean, those are the kind of things that it's not going to happen. I don't think we can't expect it to happen all at once, but what changes should we make as we take the next, chunk it off by a year, chunk it off by the next 3 years. I think we need to really take a look at what, as Rini says, what is in the best interests of the seniors in town. Are we meeting their needs today with the hours that we keep, with the programming that we offer? Do you have a document you wanted to share, Jonathan?
No, but only if we have time to discuss it. But if people want to go a different direction, then it's going to be of no use. I've said what I feel, and that's and we'll just go forward with what people want to do. But but in any event, we don't have time today to go through that, to introduce it. But I do think, just say it again, I think we're really, what I'm realizing living in a small Massachusetts town, which is a new experience for me, is that just how difficult it is to have programs and for the government to do it. And we rely so much on volunteers, not enough staff people. I know Joan would love to have more staff people, and deserves it. And that money is an issue, and that it's always, we have a lot of resourceful people always able to find that extra money to apply for the grant. I can name some of the people that have been very instrumental in the last year alone in finding funding, and then something falls in our lap like the ARPA funds, although that took some work as well. But it's a funny way to do things, and we may have no choice. But I think what it does do is it lets us know, it alerts us to the fact that money's not guaranteed for everything we want to do. Even as here this year, it's not guaranteed to be there 2 years from now. And I just think we need to be aware of some of those issues, and so we can responsibly make the recommendations for those priorities that we think are really important to the town.
I think the senior center is drastically underfunded, and I think that the priority in most communities have been police, fire, highway, and so I feel that it's very important. There's a lot of misogyny that goes with that. There's a lot of other issues that are related to that, but I do think that when it comes to town funding, I think that the senior center and library and some other services are drastically underfunded. The school department decides they want a neurodiversity program, and they're being funded for 2 years by ARPA funds. So I just feel like there's, when people want a program, they go ahead and seek funding and talk it up and all of that. And I feel like we need to decide what we want and go after it, because I don't think that the senior center, we're in a very small room, and it limits what we can do. And it's amazing what we do with what we do have. And I've just seen the comparison between departments in town, and it's drastic in my mind. So I really think that this is our time in the next 5 to 10 years to push forward with what we need, because believe me, other departments have gotten what they want.
And I don't think, Joan, you've been here 5 years now? Is it 5 years this month or last month?
5 years last month.
Joan came in at maybe just under $20 an hour as a department head, and you're at this point $27 an hour in 5 years. I mean, I don't know that I ever believed we'd get for very far over $20 an hour. But
I was on the grant. I wasn't even paid from the town wages.
Correct.
Yeah.
We made sure that you were on the operational budget. Absolutely.
So there were a lot of positive changes that occurred that people probably would have said 5 years ago, well, that's never going to happen. We don't have the money for it. And we do. And now we have a program coordinator that's paid more than the administrator. I mean, it's not going to happen all in one big swoop, but I think we need to get a small group of us together to work on a strategic plan. What does next year look like? What does that look like? And what is it that we need for funding to make sure our seniors have what they need in town? It'll be 39% of the population in 2030. And, that's a much greater population than the school. And, I mean, we fund all of us, we fund our schools because we know they're important, but we don't say, well, what is it we need? It's not, what are some of the issues getting it? I think we need to again, this is me, this is just, and I feel like we say similar things, Jonathan, in maybe different ways, but I'd like to have a small group of this committee work together, starting on a strategic plan, kind of using the guidelines that were in this program document and move it and see where we are in 3 months, work over on the next 3 months to see where it where we come out. And we are going to be doing some outreach based on from Abacus for the program. So
I'd like to see Jonathan's document, maybe not today, but I think you should share it, Jonathan, because I think we all are entitled to, our own input. But I will want to say, I know we don't want to extend the meeting any longer, but Southampton has a very strong core volunteer group. I mean, it's just amazing. What I've seen accomplished in the last 5 years. And it's because of people that really care about this town, that are not afraid to give money and time to projects that they believe in. So I think the senior center will happen. I think because of the strong advocates and volunteers that Southampton has. And the funding will come, and there are people that are very good at finding funding. And so I really believe that it will happen.
And Jonathan, yes, I echo what Joan said. Please send your document out and give people a chance to read through it and get a perspective.
Yeah, I'd like to see it too.
Well, it was done as an outline, and I really had hoped to talk about it as people looked at it, that which I was going to show online. So we'll, you know, I just have, you know, I think we're coming at this from different points, and I'm not, and I think it's not accurate to say that. I'm just looking at it from the funding. I'm thinking that those questions need to be asked at the same time, and I do think there is a problem. You know, I'll trust Rini and Joan and others who are more experienced at this than I am. But, you know, when you say that we always, you know, we'll find the funding, you know, and that we have it one year, maybe we'll find it the next year. I don't know that that's the case. And I also know that we're living in a very different economic environment, and all the projections are not that rosy right now for some of the things that might happen and for what might happen to towns, what might happen to towns for financing. Well, the municipal bond rate, for example, rates are going up. It's costing more money for towns to float bonds than it had been a year ago, and people are projecting that it could go up more. So, I mean, there's all those type of questions, and I just think that when talking priorities, and we should always talk priorities, but one of the factors that helps to determine priorities is the reality and realism of, can we do it? And can we also do it when we've also spent a certain amount on construction of a senior center, which is still going to be more for the same, say it's the same size as Hadley or South Hadley, and it might not be, it could be larger, it could be smaller. But if it was the same center, that's something that they planned 5-6 years ago, it's going to be, you know, it's going to cost more to build it in, 2 years from now. So, you know, that has to be factored into it as well. And I was saying these things should be considered. Again, I don't come to any preconceived notions as to what should be done or what shouldn't. I know that the feasibility committee, the select board, and the building committee going forward on the senior center after the feasibility committee, that they're going to be looking at the cost issues, closely on the senior center. So, I'm not, we're not going to be that involved in that. But these other things that go with the senior center, yes, those are things we're going to be involved with: the staffing, the maintenance, everything that goes into it, the equipment, the furniture that the friends, of COA are not going to be able to afford, because it's going to be more than what they currently have in their in their treasury right now. Those are just things that we need to be looking at. That's all. So that's where I was looking at it. I was thinking that this is just kind of a rubric for our discussions. And again, if I'm misunderstood, I'm misunderstood, but I've tried to explain it the best I could. I look at it, I agree that the priorities are important. I just think that you have to factor in things in deciding on those priorities. And we're not going to know the cost or anything at the outset. But I just think that at some point, not too far into the discussions, one has to say, oh, yes, that thing that we wanted to do, that maybe it's going to be a little more difficult to do than we thought it would be, especially if we're trying to do these other two things at the same time, as well as we still got the construction issue, of the senior center. So that's how I've been coming at it, and it's the way that I would want to look at these things if this board is asked to comment on these type of issues and to advise.
So also just so you know, part of the feasibility study, there's a cost estimator that's hired to give us a lot of those costs as part of the feasibility study, which would include the furniture, probably, I'm guessing also the cost of, they asked us for personnel for the future. So those may very well come out as part of the feasibility study as well. So we can, I do want everybody to think, though, if they'd be willing to help participate in a strategic planning subcommittee. We don't have to do it today, but I think it's something that we need to do as we move forward and plan and be able to answer these questions by doing some homework and research and find out how other towns have done it, and make sure that we're prepared to address the needs, again, of the seniors. Okay. So real quick, Susan, I'm sorry we're going to move on to the Friends. You have any Friends update? I know you sat in the last meeting for Jonathan, on behalf of Jonathan.
You're muted.
Still, yeah, it's contagious.
Yes, sorry. So, Janet, you were a big part of that meeting on the 13th, right? But you just want to know other major things that happened during the Friends meeting?
Anything else that was reported? Yes, I did a presentation. This presentation I gave to the select board, I did for the Friends, which I'd also sent out to everybody around that time. So just kind of chronologically.
All right.
What's occurred.
So just quickly, Joan had reported that Celebrate Southampton was a real success, that I think 8 seniors had received grab and go meals on Friday and 9 had received a free lunch on Saturday. And that really allowed people to attend who would not have. There was this discussion about the comedy show that has now already occurred and how to get those numbers up. Francine, I think we already talked about the nonprofit mailing fund, and there was an agreement to spend $275 on that mailing for the year. They also talked about increasing the membership fee. I think it used to be, or it's going. There was a vote. And it's now, I think, it'd be 15 a person, 25 for a couple. I think it was less than that.
It was 10, I think 10 and 15.
Okay. Yeah. Now I think it's gone to 15. And Cindy Palmer was there and talked about, reported on the public safety building. And I think that was most of it. Sorry, one more thing. I think that's what you missed, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think I saw the minutes. I think there were minutes that have been done for that, if I recall. But what does the Treasury stand at the moment? Would have been at the end of August.
If I can't find it, I'll send it to you, because I think I did get a copy of that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They meet next week, right, Jonathan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on Tuesday.
All right. I think I have that here, but let me see if I can send it to you, Jonathan, if I can't find it in my papers right now. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Susan. Thanks for joining the meeting as well for that.
Yeah, thanks for filling in for me.
It was fun.
Rainey, any updates from the select board that we haven't covered?
Well, just a couple of things. We have departments that report off to the select board on a quarterly basis, or sometimes less often. And this particular Tuesday coming up, the police and fire are doing, chiefs are doing an update. So if people are interested, they could watch on TV. It's always very interesting to me to hear from both fire chiefs and police chiefs on what's happening in their departments. We've been reviewing ARPA applications and awarding, money for that. It's been a little bit of a lull in terms of budget, which is nice, but that'll ramp up again towards the end of the year. So if the Senior Center is interested in applying for any capital funds, this would be the time to be thinking about that. The East Street Bridge is slated to open on the 14th of October. We're getting new phones for Town Hall, which will allow a transfer between phones and also accessing voicemail remotely. And the Public Safety Building Committee has completed the RFQ approved by the Select Board, and it's out for firms to respond. So they're about a month behind or so, month to 6 weeks behind the Senior Center Feasibility Committee in terms of the process. We're going on the 19th of October, we're going to visit Granby Public Safety Complex. And so anyway, the chiefs are going to be compiling a list of must-haves in terms of the public safety building. So that's about it.
Okay. Any other? Yes, Johnson.
Yeah. So really, if the seniors, you said that funds could be applied for what? You said the senior.
So there's a ARPA application. So the money that the select board has been sort of awarding, we gave premium pay to employees, the school got money, a number of Conservation Commission. So a number of departments and even outside groups have applied for some of the ARPA funding. So
you mentioned capital.
Oh, I was saying if, we haven't really gotten, we're not at the point of going over any kind of draft of an operational budget, but it's around this time that departments think about what they want to apply for capital funds.
Okay, capital funds would be?
Capital funds would be, like a capital improvement funds. So we have funds that when we get free cash, they go into different pots. One is operational stabilization, another one is capital. So then the capital committee will send out a request for departments to submit for capital funds. And then they meet and make recommendations to the select board and the town on who should get capital funds. So I don't think that the senior center has ever gotten capital funds. So might be an opportunity to think about what might be a capital project. I think it's over $5,000.
I just don't think the timing is right now, but I did talk to Janet specifically. I mean, I did, talk to her.
Well, when the group gets together to talk about strategic plans, if there's something that might be, a capital expense, that might be something. So, like the voting machines, I mean, there's a number of things. The schools got some last year for, my God, I think that was a huge bird. There's been a lot of funds that have gone to different departments for different things. And I don't just, seniors haven't really asked for much. So, but that would be a different pot of money than the operational budget.
Okay, Jonathan?
Yeah, for this committee that's going to look at how to spend the $50,000 in ARPA funds, could we also add to their charge to take a look at whether there's any of the other ARPA funds that we want to apply for, that they recommend we apply for? You said there's like 1.8 million still to use.
Yeah, but probably 3/4 of that's already been expended.
But but some of it is still open.
Some of it is still open.
How long are they taking? I guess I thought we've got 50,000 just designated to the Council on Aging that I chip away from any of the other departments. That was just my personal opinion, but
it's a 2-year thing. So it's on 2024, I believe. Okay. And there's an application on the website for ARPA funding.
So Joan, if you and Sylvia, I know Jim had to leave, but if you want to add that, is there anything else that beyond the 50,000 that you think we could apply for ARPA funding? Additional. Okay. All right, folks. It's been a packed agenda, but that happens when you meet once a month, right? So Sylvia, Joan, and Jim, who is no longer on the call, please, try to get together, whether it's via Zoom or whatever, and start talking about the 50,000. And I would also, if you can. Me
too.
And Rini, I'm sorry.
Rini.
Sorry.
Yeah.
After next Wednesday, I think we want to kind of nail down the volunteer coordinator, and then maybe after that we can talk about.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I do.
Susan. Oh, sorry. So it is 5:54 p.m. and roll call. Susan, just voice vote. Voice vote, Susan. Sorry.
Aye.
Sylvia?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Josie?
Aye.
And Janet, aye. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody, for the great exchange as usual.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.